James is the Managing Director of Harper Stone and will talk to us about customer experience and how to drive better outcomes through measuring it. Thank you.
All right, well, I just want to say that this is probably the worst moment to follow a speaker like Kirsten. She was amazing. I've never had any experience at all in planning, but I now want a job there. Also, I guess I want to start with thanking the Public Sector Network for having us here today. Harper Stone are a Sydney-based consultancy working in the digital and data specialties with a particular focus of working with government. Our mission is obviously to fuel data-driven organisations by giving everyone the ability to ask their own questions through data and search. This is when designers go badly and didn't realise how big that screen was going to be, but I'm James Harper, and that's a really large picture of a very small person. I worked with government for most of my professional life. I started off as an engineer, aeronautical engineer in the Air Force, and then I moved into IT, like all good engineers do. And I worked with a number of government agencies as my clients. I also had the privilege, and I say privilege, I worked with FACTS on Child Story program, which was probably the first time in my life when I got to see the impact that we can really have on people and a community. So I was very, very lucky to work with Lisa Alonso-Love and also Greg Wells, who ran an amazing program, which was a very, very difficult program. And then prior to that, I was working at the Public Service Commission, and I was the Director of Workforce Analytics. And that's when I jumped out of, I guess, public life and jumped into Harper Stone. And we work with a number of government agencies. We do work with Planning, Industry and Environment, Regional New South Wales, and I'm going to speak to you a little bit later about our work with Department of Customer Service. So being data-driven is a real passion of mine with my own background in analytics. And we've already heard from Kirsten the amazing impact that data can have on our operations. I guess there's a number of reasons why that's been happening, and one of those is some changes that happened from Treasury back in 2017. So back in 2017, they introduced the idea of outcome-driven budgeting, which I know when I was working inside public sector wasn't my most fun, I guess, thing, but I think that it has done a lot of things. So they did do a phased introduction, and over the 3 years since they announced that the change to outcome-driven budgeting, they've worked really closely with the sector. So initially, they wanted to see some of the performance information alongside budgets, to now when we're seeing it reported consistently with our budgets. And it's easy to understand the importance of that. So obviously, we want to see investment from our public resources into things that are actually going to deliver value to the people of New South Wales. The core of outcome-driven budgeting, and the reason I'm talking about it, is because of its link to data. So we can see that traditionally we've had that end-of-year cycle of our reporting. With the introduction of outcome-driven budgeting, we've had a much more focus on continual reporting and continual monitoring and tracking of our, I guess, the benefits that we're deriving from our work. So we already heard a lot about the e-planning portal, but we've seen that across lots and lots of different agencies. So the use of the Opal card by Transport, the COVID check-in app, these are all opportunities for us as agencies, or you as agencies now, to be able to get hold of that data, to be able to use it to make decisions, and to, I guess, drive continual improvements in the programs that you're delivering. One of the issues, I guess, for me that I've seen is whilst we have lots and lots of data, there's been lots of blockers as well to us actually being able to use that data. And I think that one of the core reasons is because the tools that we've had available, that we use every day in our life have been developed quite a while ago now. So they were quite revolutionary back in the 90s when they were first developed. But they were very much developed for our analyst users, not our business users who really want to take that data and be able to actually make some decisions and apply some change to it. What it means is that we're very much reliant on, I guess, dashboards and reports, static things that are created by analysts for us to be able to consume. The reason behind that, right, is obviously one part of it is that the tools were built in the 90s and they're built for users that aren't the typical users who want to make these decisions from data, but also that the whole system is quite complex. So in terms of actually getting the information, we normally have to source that from multiple systems across our enterprise. Then we want to obviously bring that into one consolidated warehouse. But then again, because these tools were built in a different time, they're built for different volumes of data. So a lot of the tools that we use are desktop tools. So they can't handle very, very large volumes of data. So then we go through a whole range of steps, right, to cut that data down. We either take a little thin slice, or we might summarize it so we drop out that transactional individual information so that we get a bit of a summary look so that our tools can handle it. And then at that point, we're sort of at the point when a data analyst can then get into a BI tool, create you that dashboard and that report, and essentially they become a really glorified content producer where they're pushing content out to you as the executive who wants to make a decision from it. Layer on top of that, across government we've got almost 408,000 workers, around 3,300-ish execs, but only 200 people in the government sector that have got the name analyst in their title. So you can already see that if we're using tools that are relying on an analyst to be able to create a report, we've got a massive backlog. And McKinsey did a report across enterprise-size organisations, and they found that on average it takes 4.8 days, so almost 5 days, to get a new report, which in 5 days in COVID times can have a huge impact, right? It's no longer okay to wait 5 days for a report. So what we really need to do, right, is we really need to flip this. So again, consolidating data, bringing it into a warehouse, I think is going to continue to be an important step. It's important because we need to ensure that the data that we're working with has got governance around it, that the quality is there, and that we're really willing to make those decisions from that data. But I think that that's really the role of the BI analyst, right, is to prepare that data for our users. What we then want to do is we want to be able to expose this out in a way that all of our business users are actually able to ask their own questions of data and get those answers back straight away. If we think about it in our personal lives, if I ask you a question right now, you can pull your phone out and you can have an answer to me in seconds about any topic that you want. But if I ask you the same question about the organisation and the data that you work with every day, how many minutes is it going to take you? And I say minutes when probably going to be days, right? But that's our key problem. And I really want to focus now on some of the work we've recently done with customer service. So the Digital New South Wales team are undertaking a project at the moment of website consolidation. So there's roughly 750 websites across government, across 35 different content management systems. And what that does for the people who want to interact with government makes a really, really horrible experience, a really disjointed experience. So what customer service and the Digital New South Wales team are doing is they're leading a website consolidation project. And they're working across government, across agencies, with communications teams across a lot of different organisations to create a consolidated website. Ideally, it will be a single website. It probably will never quite get to a single website, but that's the goal. And so, in line with outcomes-driven budgeting, the Digital New South Wales team identified 44 key metrics that they wanted to be able to track. They wanted to be able to track the effectiveness of the website, but also the progress of the consolidation project. And those 44 metrics were coming from 6 different data sources. And we wanted to create one unified dashboard. And so anyone who works in data will be sitting out there, or should be sitting out there saying, well, any BI platform can do that. And I would say, yes, any BI platform can do that. What they also wanted to do was they wanted to not be reliant on an analyst. Even within DCS, and they have the DAC sitting inside DCS, but the DAC is very much focused on advanced analytics, and they have a lot of work on. They needed to be self-sufficient, and I think that every agency and every branch and every division and unit needs to be self-sufficient. So they wanted to be not reliant on an analyst because they didn't have an analyst within their team. They also wanted, as the different agencies came onto the platform, to be able to provide access to this data to each of those agencies, to the comms teams and also to the execs from those agencies. And they couldn't justify basically spending a day in a training course to become a pseudo-analyst. So that were the additional requirements on top of the other. And so the answer for our project was search. So we wanted to basically provide a Google-like experience across data to make it easy and accessible for any of the users to be able to get into the platform and ask their own questions and get answers back immediately. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you a couple of quick videos, which are really just snapshots of how, I guess, we interact with the data. So again, the product that we deployed for them was ThoughtSpot. It's got the capability of doing dashboards like any other product out there, but where it really differs is when you've got a question that you can't answer on the dashboard. That's where we basically use search to be able to answer those questions. And this example, the first one that I'm going to give you is the manager of the Digital New South Wales team, so not an analyst. We deployed the dashboard, this is an example of one of the dashboards that they have there. But she wanted to understand hopefully this works. This is the main screen. So what she wanted to understand was what was the effectiveness of on-site search across the consolidated website. So here you can see the main search screen, and you can see that we've got a data set here which captures analytics from both Sajari and also from Google Analytics and joins them together. So we can just double click to get an ineffective site searches metric. We can see that there's 33,000 ineffective searches that are happening at the moment. We can easily add the ability to see that on a chart by adding date monthly, so we can see the trend over time. And we can see that obviously the performance of the ineffective site searches is improving, so we're getting a reduction. Now that could be because we're actually doing a great job, or potentially because we're getting a lot less search traffic. So we've just added on here the number of sessions and changed our chart type. So you can see the sessions on the line, and you can see the ineffective searches in the bars. So not only is our ineffective searches reducing, but also over the same point in time, we've got an increase in our traffic to this website. And in doing this, we can see that there's this real peak. So now I've got another question, right, which is, where's all this traffic coming from? So we've got the ability with ThoughtSpot to be able to drill anywhere. We don't have to set up drill paths. We don't have to constrain our users. So any data point that we have in our data set, we're able to drill into. So if, as a user, thinks through a problem and gets another piece of information and has another question, they're able to drill anywhere. So once we drill into this data, you can see that we've got a massive amount of traffic coming from our organic search. So that's just one example, and this is, like I said, this is something that the manager of the team there, after we deployed, it was the first question that they had that wasn't able to be answered by the dashboard, and she was able to do this all on her own without any assistance from us. And I actually just found this because I had a little poke around the other day in the system and saw what she'd been doing. The next example that I want to show you is something that's quite tricky to do in most BI platforms, but it's something that we get all the time, which is how are different metrics changing over time? So here we have basically the same data that we had before, which is looking at the traffic that we're getting to the site by channel. But what we want to see is, what's happening with our new users? Are we getting an increase in new users, or are we getting a decrease in new users? So if I was going to do this in a number of other platforms, it would take quite a lot of effort. The way that we can do it in ThoughtSpot, we've got a few keywords that make it very, very simple. So I literally type how I think about the problem. What's the growth of my new users by date? That's really what I want to know. And in a couple of clicks, I've got a chart up, which shows me a line chart of how that's changing over time. But of course, doing this on a waterfall chart is what I really want to see. That's the sort of standard way. One click, change my chart type. And in a couple of seconds, I've done something that literally would take me, as an experienced analyst, 5 to 10 minutes in another platform. So again, really, really easy for our business user. I'm just basically typing what I'm thinking. The last thing I want to show you is AI and how we can use it in ThoughtSpot. So everything I've done so far has really been driven by the user, so answering questions using search and using natural language. Within ThoughtSpot, we've got an AI engine that's called Spot IQ. And what it does basically is it takes a data set, and I'm just going to get a little broad data set here. I'm going to be able to get my AI engine to take all of those fields of data, and I'm going to get it to automatically go across and find for me outliers and trends and correlations without me having to do anything. So here I'm just going to click the Analyze button, and what that's doing is it's basically pushing that data that I've selected through a whole heap of different models, and it's going to create me a dashboard. And what it's showing me here is all of the outliers that it's found, so interesting insights, and this is based on, I guess, pushing the data through the model, but also what other users have been searching. So it may find, it's not unusual to find 13, 14, 15,000 insights. It'll find you the 25 most relevant based on what other people are using across the platform, and it will surface those up for you. And then it will also, I guess, show you cross correlations and trends as well. So here you can see that our new users are trending upwards. The last thing I want to talk about, I guess, is, what does this mean for the future? So we've really seen, with our example here from customer service, that the ability for users to actually be able to get in there and answer their own questions without being reliant on pre-built dashboards and analysts is now a possibility. There's been a lot of work done and research done about what this means. So last year, Harvard Business Review released a piece of research, and it found that when you empower your frontline workers, so not just your execs, but your actual frontline workers, with data and the ability to ask their own questions, it results in 69% increase in customer satisfaction, a really significant improvement in productivity, but also importantly, something that government is very concerned about is the employee engagement. So empowering our workforce has massive impacts across the board on the output and the performance of our businesses. And alongside of that, of the same group of organisations that were surveyed, they found that 54% of people across sort of these enterprise organisations expected to now have self-service analytics. So that ability for users to actually get in there themselves by the end of 2022. So only 18 months away now. And I think it's also important to consider, what happens post-COVID, because it's been a huge impact on what we've done with our organisations. So post-COVID, another organisation, which is the Dresden Advisory Service, they did some research to look at, how important self-service analytics was to their businesses. So February 2020, so just as COVID was sort of kicking off here, only 9% considered self-service analytics to be critical to the performance of their business. But move that forward just a few months, and now over a third of businesses now consider it to be absolutely critical to their business. And it's easy to understand. When we're working remotely, we've got less access, I guess, to those skills that we would otherwise rely on, and we do need to be more self-sufficient. So thank you for your time. I'm not sure if we have questions now or later, but thank you.